Welcome to the Cemoh Marketing Podcast, where we interview business owners, leaders, or marketing professionals to find out their lessons and stories for success.
So welcome to the Cemoh Marketing Podcast, Paula Thomas, who is in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, our very first guest to have ever been from the Middle East. So you are a first in that, so congratulations. You are a loyalty marketing expert, and we're going to talk all things loyalty marketing as well. And you are also a very prodigious podcaster. So give us the Paula Thomas, the Paula Thomas quick history. Yes, the story.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Simon. Great to be here. The story is very varied. So I think I'm of a similar age profile to you, originally from Ireland, and originally actually a beauty therapist. So very random in terms of my background. But I did listen to your full show talking about your full history, so it's interesting to hear. We've both done lots of things in our lives. But for me, Simon, I think what I learned very on is that I loved business. And I realized that I actually love to make people feel good in business. So that's a really interesting dynamic. And it's something that loyalty marketeers actually seem to share. So I got into loyalty marketing about 13 years ago now in the telecommunications industry back in Ireland for a huge global brand called Telefonica. I ran their loyalty program for about 7 years and then worked on lots of different loyalty programs on a freelance basis. And about 3 years ago, I started my podcast, which is called Let's Talk Loyalty. So I get to talk to people all over the world about this industry, which I love, and get to share all the stories.
All right, let's dive straight into it. Let's talk about this loyalty. When you mention loyalty schemes to people in marketing, sometimes they get a little bit of a bad rap because people think loyalty schemes, they think, oh, I'm getting another point scheme that I'm never going to redeem, or I'm getting a little shitty piece of card that I need to put a stamp on, all those kind of things. Yeah. Tell me from your perspective, what makes a good loyalty scheme?
Well, it's a really interesting question, Simon, because one thing I definitely decided with my podcast was I want to talk about loyalty as an emotion for business. So actually to drive loyal behavior. So a loyalty scheme is definitely one way to do that, but it's actually not the only way. So for sure, I spend a lot of time talking to people who run big programs, and you're right, there's a certain amount of, let's say, complacency or let's say frustration actually, when something feels maybe too transactional. So that really is where loyalty programs have sometimes gone off track, I think. And I think what has happened, particularly in the last couple of years, and maybe with the pandemic, is people really realize what's important. So they want to be connected to brands that actually do have good business sense and obviously great products, but they actually want to do business with brands that they like. So to me, loyalty is something that can be done in lots of different ways. So points is one, stamps is one, and you're right, there's reasons to do those and not to do them. But also there's some very interesting models, Simon, around things like partnerships, which is how I started in loyalty, and interesting things like subscriptions, for example. So loyalty can come in lots of shapes and sizes at the moment.
So talk to me about when you very first started off, you were working, you said telecoms in Ireland.
Yes, exactly.
What does a telecoms company, how do they breed loyalty? Because most people hate their telecoms company, or at best are indifferent towards them. So that's probably the hard. I mean, you probably started off in the hardest industry possible there. But how does the telecoms industry, deal with loyalty?
Thank you, Simon. You're absolutely right. And actually, things like utilities are probably much later into the loyalty game than, the sexy stuff like airlines and hotels. So Telefonica is a Spanish company, super famous, very big in South America, huge in the UK. And actually, I think what Telefonica decided was, well, O2 obviously is a great brand, but they didn't want to do anything with points. So I didn't have to build any points programs actually at all, which was amazing. But the key thing was we built an entire kind of proposition around partnerships, which was what can you get? So let's say you're a customer of O2. What can you get exclusively as a customer of O2 that you can't get if you're a customer of some other telecoms company? So my job was to go out to all of the really big, like Pizza Hut and Pizza Express, for example, or high street retail brands, and negotiate exclusive discounts. So as a customer of O2, I got 50% off in Pizza Express or half price cinema tickets. So there was kind of a mutually beneficial partnership there, where the brand obviously got access to our database, and we gave them, extraordinary benefits to our customers, and obviously we sent them loads of customers as well. So this is, I suppose, the thing I was talking about. I like loyalty because you get to make people happy if you can do it well. Yeah. Not easy, but can be done.
I guess here in Australia, our major telecoms company, Telstra, sort of fights it out with Optus, certainly in the mobile phone space.
Yeah.
And Telstra do a rewards program and a points program, which I've never paid attention to, and I really should. I've probably got thousands of points there. But probably the one thing that I see that sort of cuts through with me is, when they give you exclusive tickets, or the exclusive opportunity to buy tickets to an event before someone else can do that.
Exactly. Yeah. So isn't that an extraordinary benefit? So you kind of value that. So you might only use that once every couple of years, Simon, but when you do, it really matters. So that's, I think, when, and I think particularly it is utility. So as you said, most people don't care about their phone company. The prices are pretty much the same. Clearly the product is almost the same. So what is it that's going to make a difference in my life that's actually going to keep me loyal to that brand? So it takes a lot of thinking, and it's great fun to work on.
And the other thing, I think, then when you look at the flip side of here in the Australian market, you have someone like Optus, who's Telstra's sort of main competitor.
Yeah.
And Optus, I think 3 years ago, bought the rights to show the Premiership, the English Premiership in Australia.
Yeah.
Which had historically have been held by satellite companies or cable companies.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden a phone company then has this.
Wow.
I guess that, I mean, and sure, I think they charge a subscription to Optus. Maybe they do. Maybe Optus people get it for free of charge. I don't know, but because I'm on Telstra. But I guess that's kind of taking the loyalty thing to the nth degree. But I guess it's also that presumably they know their customers well, or they know a segment of their customers well. They obviously felt that segment was big enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Football watching Australians.
Totally.
That it was going to be big enough for them to spend that money in order to breed that loyalty.
And there might be a correlation, for example, so it's English football and people might be phoning England. I don't know. But I think one thing that really does prove itself time and time again in business is, this whole thing, the Pareto principle, like the 80-20 rule. Like if you know who your most valuable customers are and just even take care of them, then everything else almost takes care of itself. So I do think loyalty professionals like us just kind of go, okay, how can we really make something that really matters to the people that matter to our business?
And that's interesting, because when I sort of talk with clients about strategy, we talk about six categories of customers, and the number one is the adorers, the people who love you.
Yeah.
And there's obviously brands around the world. Some of them obviously do that very well. And you've got the things like Lego and things like Apple and things like Tesla and those kind of things. Those create these adorers, and I guess that's what it's all about is taking people who are just regular buyers and converting them, and that's the model I use, is buyers and considerers, adorers, buyers and considerers.
Nice.
But taking buyers and converting them into adorers.
Totally. Well, I'm sure you agree, Simon. At the end of the day, marketing is a complex, expensive and time-consuming business. It's also essential. But if you can get your customers to be advocates or adorers, as you've said, if you can get them to recommend your business, then I think our job is half done. So yes, we have to take care of them so they take that action and do that behavior. But really, it's the most powerful. I love word of mouth marketing. So how can we cultivate that within the kind of businesses or the programs or the companies that we run?
And I always say with the more adorers, actually, almost the less marketing you have to do because they're out there as the
Exactly.
salespeople.
It's a whole sales force working on your
Yeah,
behalf. Totally. Yeah.
yeah. If
Yeah.
you think about, the way Elon Musk sells his, this new shiny truck,
Yeah.
his entire marketing expense is to do an announcement on stage in front of
Yeah.
1,000 people and broadcast it.
Yeah.
That actual marketing expenditure is absolutely tiny.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, 100,000 people sign up and want to buy the truck from, because there's so many adorers out there.
And I find it amazing as well. Things like, I believe Twitter, for example, never, paid a cent in marketing for itself ever. It just was
No.
created as something that was so useful that people kind of went, oh, you got to get on Twitter. So all of a sudden it markets itself. So yeah, that's a power that I think is extraordinary. And as business owners, we have to be able to harness it.
Do you think as you generate more adorers or advocates or whatever we want to call them, there's the reverse is that we tend to create haters as well? We have the we kind of have the dual effect there.
I don't think they're related in any way. I think
Right.
the internet can be a toxic place, so I think it depends what business you're in. But it's one of the reasons I came off Twitter, for example. So I'm one of the few marketeers that, would you believe, this is totally outrageous, but I'm not on Instagram and I'm not on Twitter.
I honestly, I would not be on Instagram if it wasn't for work.
There you
I've
go.
actually posted less and less recently.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because I find, and this is going to be sad for a 47-year-old man, but I find TikTok more interesting and more engaging these days, and I feel it doesn't, it's not sucking information out of me in order to use it.
And I really think that's important. So the reason I guess I'm not on Instagram is because I want to focus. So
Yeah.
I think we're both obviously podcasters and lovers of content. I haven't even gone down the way of TikTok. I've dabbled with Clubhouse, but what I have found is I love podcasting. So to me, it's a case of, okay, personally, I'm on Facebook. Professionally, I'm on LinkedIn. And then from a brand perspective, I'm on, all of the podcast channels. So I think I think we all have a limited amount of time and attention. So I prefer to focus it in a couple of channels that I can kind of do well and then leave the Instagrammers to themselves,
Yeah, fair enough. We do some, it's funny actually, we do some, we started doing some TikTok, like taking
Cool.
TikTok seriously.
Yeah, great.
About a month
Well
ago,
done.
and we did it. We've got a little series that we're running, Great Australian Brands, where we
Amazing.
60 seconds overview of what we
Yeah.
think is a really good Australian brand.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. The ones we get the most engagement with are the ones where there are plenty of people that dislike the brand.
Oh, controversial.
Plenty of people who like to, we
Yeah.
have a Mexican food chain here in Australia called Guzman and Gomez.
Okay.
And it is Mexican in the loosest sense of the term. It's not
Okay.
it's not traditional Mexican.
Not
It's
high end. Okay.
Americanized Mexican food, Chipotle
Okay.
kind of sort of thing. Anyway,
Cool.
but it's almost at unicorn status. The business has
Wow.
grown so drastically. I think in about 7 or 8 years, I think it's valued at something like, again, I'm sure I'm wrong with this, but something like $860 million US
Good
dollars.
Lord.
It's
Wow.
just launched into Japan and Korea and North America and all these kind of things. Anyway, there's a huge fan. So you go to any Guzman and Gomez, it's rarely not busy.
Yeah.
Because it's good, it's cheap, it's fast.
Sure.
It's that sort of thing, and it's not full of fat and those kind of things. That their whole loyalty thing is consistency, and I guess that's a form of loyalty
Yeah.
we'll talk about in a second.
Sure.
But yeah, I find when we posted that TikTok, we just got these rabid people who are telling us how bad the food was and how bad the product was. I'm going, $800 million brand. It can't
Yeah.
be that bad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess going back to that point, consistency and loyalty, I guess, go hand in hand.
Yeah.
If you're trying to build a brand.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a good example that I'm a big fan of at the moment, Simon, because it is this kind of new form of loyalty, which is paid loyalty. So it's really, really interesting. I haven't seen any Australian examples just yet, but I've seen it certainly in the US, done well and not done well. So obviously, the model's not the answer. It's obviously has to be executed well. But certainly in the UK, for example, Pret a Manger have launched it as well. Across Europe, Espresso House have launched paid loyalty. So it does deliver, to your point about consistency. So Panera Bread is a massive kind of coffee shop, cafe, lunch brand in the States. I think they have about 2,500 stores. But just before the pandemic, they decided, in fact, based on a really cool marketing insight, that most Americans, I think there's like 160 million Americans buy coffee every single day. So it's an extraordinary business. But they said at least half of those people feel very guilty about spending, I think it's over $1,000 basically on those coffees. So what Panera Bread decided to do is say, okay, let's do a fixed price, unlimited coffee deal. So it's $8.99 and you can go and get your coffee in Panera Bread every single day. But what's extraordinary, though, is, okay, $9 easily justify that kind of money. But the amount of loyalty, so for example, there's 800,000 people, first of all, have signed up for the deal last time I checked. So they haven't announced any new numbers, but that's 800,000 people guaranteed to pay them $9 a month. Then the upsell, the cross-sell, they have a 90% retention rate. So in terms of actual loyalty, it's unbelievable that people are kind of going, this is phenomenal. I can get my coffee, I can get a sandwich or a cake or whatever if I want to. And they've published some extraordinary numbers. So I think there's some really cool ideas around building loyalty in new ways.
So that's how so your sort of definition of paid loyalty is that subscription model. That's kind of because the word subscription has got a bit kind of hackneyed and been done 1,000 times, and now us marketers are calling it paid loyalty, and that makes it sound like that's all fresh and new.
Totally. But, Amazon Prime is a paid loyalty program. That's a thing. Yeah. So, yes, you can use the word subscription to talk about Netflix, but to use it in the context of a retail business for the first time for physical product in unlimited quantity, I think is a game changer. So I think for your listeners and they're looking to build their businesses, I think there's lots of ideas there that are quite new.
Do you think that would translate well? Because obviously a lot of the clients we service and are relatively small, medium-sized businesses. I guess that can be, the kind of concept of paid loyalty in any business, the fear is that you'll be taken advantage of.
Sure.
If you did a paid loyalty beer subscription, then people would just be getting blind drunk
disaster.
Every night.
Total disaster. I'm Irish, Simon. You're British or English.
I was going to say,
totally.
The Irish love a drink and a fight. They'd be, straight onto it. So, but do you think that sort of scares people off, the idea that people might take advantage of paid loyalty schemes?
It's absolutely, Simon. So I think what you have to do is obviously you have got to do the modeling. You've got to run your business case. You've got to set your expectations. You've got to get a sense of, what will the upsell be? So if I do get an extra, increase in traffic. So for example, the figures that Panera Bread said, instead of, for example, somebody coming in 4 times a month, they now come in 10 times a month. So the frequency is extraordinary. It's more than double. So if somebody's coming into your store more than twice, okay, so are they going to buy more stuff? And what I do like, actually, I've seen it in South Africa, for example, with a juice brand, and what they've done is they've just launched like a 1 month, so it's not an automatic renewing recurring subscription. They've just said, here's a 1 month deal. And obviously it's prepaid, and I think that eliminates some of the risk, because you're totally right. If somebody's, concerned about diluting their revenue, then that is something that you need to be careful of. Like, you don't want to be giving away the whole house, So I wouldn't be recommending, for example, you do subscriptions for an expensive high-end meal, or your Mexican friends, for example, So
they would probably get a paid subscription out of me. They would most likely. Yeah.
And then, so if you were getting your meal, for example, and then you were buying beer, well, then all of a sudden you're probably going to buy more beer. So everybody wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit. Two questions, sort of more personal questions. How did you get from Ireland to Dubai? What was
Sure.
What was the reason for that?
Yeah.
Just fortuitous or?
Not even, Simon. I had family who came here in the late 70s.
Okay.
So that was very unusual. And I grew up hearing about this extraordinary land of opportunity. And you've been here, it's certainly true. This is a very ambitious and very positive place to live. So I literally upped sticks in, what year was it? 1995, the first time.
Right. Okay.
And moved over, did some great work with British Airways and then Emirates. So I started my digital marketing career launching Emirates.com in the year 2000. So so that was super fun. So I've been in digital and anything to do with e-commerce for quite a long time. So so I went back to Ireland and then moved back here again because I just love it so much. Yeah.
And probably a bit warmer as well there, isn't it? Than
totally.
It is in Ireland. Yeah.
And thankfully at the moment with COVID, I can tell you we are living the dream compared to Europe. So very grateful.
Imagine.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. And so, and the podcast, what brought you to doing a podcast?
That's actually a really good question, Simon, because for me, I'm a consultant. I'm in a very niche industry. So I'm well known in Ireland. I'm well known in Dubai. But if you want to build a global brand, there are a few things I think, certainly, kind of 2 years on, that are as powerful as kind of showing up and creating content consistently. And you raised that point earlier. So my favorite marketeer, I'm sure you know Seth Godin. So I read Seth Godin's blog kind of most days. And for him, as one of the top marketeers in the world, to say that the best marketing he does is create content, that kind of focused my attention that I should be doing something. And I find writing very time consuming and, to be honest, just kind of, tiring. So I found actually I really like talking. And I have more questions than answers, Simon. So I'm like, oh my God, I can get to talk to all these cool people, ask them how to do this really cool work, and they'll tell me. Yeah. So, And at the time as well, Simon, nobody was podcasting professionally about the loyalty marketing industry. So I was first. I really value innovation. So I wanted to be the first to do something. So I'm super proud. So literally launched in September 2019. And I have released an episode every single week. In fact, I'm now twice weekly. And some cool stories and some amazing brands I've got to talk to. So cool. It's the proudest thing I would say I've ever done.
Didn't think about doing more video? Is that something that you sort of, or you just prefer the podcast medium?
It's interesting, actually. I did dabble with that. So a few months ago, I said, okay, let me do like a dual format. Let me record it in video and put the audio on the channel as well. But I found it distracted me and the audience I wasn't putting the attention on marketing it. So back to the thing about let's just do something well. I just stopped with YouTube and I said, no, I'll just keep on with the audio.
Okay. And how do you market the podcast? Because obviously, for anyone that's out there that started a podcast or wants to start a podcast, marketing it is probably 80% of the battle. 20% of it is actually recording the thing, because recording a podcast is relatively easy in comparison to a lot of other things that you can do. Sure. It's a relatively low entry point. That's just, one of the attractions for me, because I'm so hopelessly unorganized. But how do you find the best way of promoting it?
Well, I did one really big thing, and that was I found a partner, which clearly I'm good at doing. But there's a really great website, some guys in the US that have a website called The Wise Marketeer. So I've been reading their blog for years. They do extraordinary work, but they didn't have a podcast. So they kept asking me to write for them and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to write, but let's do a deal where I'll show up every week with amazing content in audio form, and you can put it on your top navigation and tell all of your readers about it. So they get fresh new content and I get an amazing audience. So works really, really well.
Cool. And so what sort of plan for you from here? I mean, obviously the podcast seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. Your consultancy work, I mean, how are you doing a lot of that, or is that sort of, getting pushed to the side a bit?
To be honest, I don't want to do any more consulting, and you know this as a marketing agency guy. So I've never wanted to have employees. So I'm a bit of a perfectionist, Simon. So I prefer to do everything myself. So definitely not scalable. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. For me, the podcast is now a business bigger than my consulting. So I have sponsors, I have brands. So I have some of the top loyalty technology companies that I partner with, and they obviously sponsor it. So if I can create this business and just really create a bigger audience for the show, I think that's the plan for the next few years.
Awesome. So I guess my last question for today then, small business, small, medium-sized business. Yeah. Listening to this, thinking about loyalty, thinking about trying to, be better at customer retention and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
What are some actionable points? Maybe just like 2 or 3 things that they can sit there and go, right, I'm going to start looking at implementing those, tomorrow. And again, we deal with not the big corporates, but just
totally.
The smaller, medium-sized ones. Yeah, local businesses.
Yeah. I think for me, the first thing is about mindset, Simon. So I think there's a lot of confusion around, what is loyalty and if it is just this, is silly points thing. So for me, the very first thing is just to sit down and go, okay, what does it look like if I was to be loyal to my customers rather than expecting them to be loyal to me? I need to step forward first. So I think there has to be that kind of flip and sit down and write out, how can I be loyal? So I often talk on my show about, on my birthday, for example, what happens with all these brands. I've given my date of birth to them. I've told them, what I like. So who is showing loyalty to me? So I think if you can literally go, okay, identify who my top customers are and find some way to make them feel special. And whether that's a free cup of coffee on their birthday or sending them a thank you email to say thanks for that, I think there's extraordinary power in just being loyal to them. And then I think, sometimes you can just simply talk to maybe the point of sale guys that you work with, the technology companies, ask them what functionality they might have, and start to build up some simple capabilities. Because I'm sure you know very well, Simon, from next year, digital's going to be a lot harder because Google's not going to be doing cookies anymore. So first-party data and having your own customer database will be absolutely critical. So I think now start thinking ahead to capture that data and then see what you can do with it over time, but build it slowly, be patient, and people will appreciate it for sure.
I think I've said probably a dozen times in the last 3 months about the focus all businesses should have on collecting email addresses.
There you go.
And I think I've said equally many times. I've never seen a business with a big email list who use that email list on a regular basis fail. I don't think that. I'd go as far as to say it's almost impossible to fail if you've got a big database of customers and you're talking to them on a regular basis through email. You'd have to be spectacularly stupid to screw that up, right?
Totally.
Because there's, and even even if there's another COVID or there's another something like this, if you're sitting there with 50,000 people on a database, and when you pump an email out, they make. I honestly, I had this conversation 3 hours ago with a girl who imports and makes nightlights for kids.
Okay.
And even she said, just in passing, she goes, every time I send an email out, we make sales. And I'm like,
amazing. Point proven. And one of my recent guests, Simon, is an Australian brand. I'm sure you've heard of Adore Beauty. It's the biggest pure play online retailer in Australia. So they've just launched a loyalty program. And exactly to your point, first of all, they've had a podcast, which blew my mind for skincare. I'm like, where's YouTube? But their strategy is podcasts and loyalty. Okay. So extraordinary. You're absolutely right. Build that relationship. It's a two-way thing and people love it.
If anybody wants to get hold of you, want to ask you a question, what's the best way of reaching out to you, Paula?
It's Paula at letstalkloyalty.com.
There we go. That was simple. But you're also on LinkedIn as well, which is where I found you. You seem to be quite active on there as well.
Totally.
So look, thank you for your insights and thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure as my first Middle Eastern guest.
There you are, Simon.
Probably my first Irish guest as well. So maybe two birds with one stone there.
Brilliant.
There we go.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
And
All right,
thanks
thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Simon. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.